beautiful podcast family. How are you? Welcome back. Another week of podcast Pocket Full of Sunshine. If you're new here, thank you for joining the podcast today. This podcast is real, raw, and true stories about grief, trauma, addiction, domestic violence, pretty much anything we experience in our lives that really puts us through it. I've been through more than I can even put into one sentence. So go back through, check it out, see what you think, comment, like, subscribe, share my podcast, please, 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 please. I'm just trying to reach people, build a community. All of the platforms that I air on are free to listen, and I'm just here for encouragement and to let people know that they're not alone in this journey, and that there are people out here that understand, people like me. So if you're new, welcome. And if you're a loyal listener, thank you. And I'm happy to have you with me again this week. I have titled this episode today, Chapter 4. I turned 40 this week. And it's a new chapter for me in this book of life that I'm writing. So not literally, but figuratively. I'm writing a journal, but not a book. So anyway, we're going to go back over the last 3 chapters and then jump into chapter 4 of my life and what I have planned for this year and where I'm going to take it. So let's do it. So looking back through life, like chapter 1 for me was childhood, right? Years 1 through 10. So as you all know, of course, like we don't develop memories or things like that until we're about 4 or 5 years old. So the memories I have from the time I was 4 until the time I was 10 of my childhood, I do have some great family memories. Like we would go stay at hotels on the weekends and we would be able to swim in the pool. We would go to Colonial Beach for a weekend. Stewart's Draft, which is a little campground near where we live. Half Moon Beach was another cool place we used to go a lot, day trips and stuff like that. So we did lots of fun things when we were kids. We raised our own animals, meat rabbits, chickens, pigs, all that good stuff. So we had all the things that kids love and kids want to do, right? We had a pool at home. We could go outside, and we didn't have a 4-wheeler, but we had a lawnmower that we took the mower deck off of, and we would drive it around the yard like it was a 4-wheeler. My sister and I put that thing in rabbit gear and we are good to go. Like we are cruising around that yard. Okay. And what we literally drove that thing until the steering wheel broke off of it. And then we put this ratchet and socket on there and would use that like to turn the wheel, and then you got to flip it back and go the other way, flip it back and go the other way. It was so crazy, but we had a blast with it. We tied a wagon to the back of it. We would pull each other around. We did the best with what we had, right? And so I do have great childhood memories, but then you have the what's behind the frame. Right? Because I've said a million times, a picture says 1,000 words, but what's behind the frame? What about the words behind the frame? That's what finishes your book, right? Because just giving people what they see on the surface is not really giving them the full picture. So a lot of us live like that. We give people, especially now that we have social media is so prominent, and it's such a outlet for people to look okay and seem okay, but really behind those pictures, behind that social media account, they are not okay. They are struggling. They are in domestic violence relationships. They're going through addiction. They're going through all this trauma that they've never dealt with. They have lost people in their lives and they're grieving, and they don't know who or how to deal with this. So we really got to look behind that frame. And in the first chapter of my life, Like, I look back through photo albums and there's pictures and pictures and pictures, and all of us are smiling and happy and wonderful. My whole family, my mom, my dad, me, my sister, my sisters. And then I sit back and I think, like, nobody saw what was behind the frame. They saw what was on the surface. Or did they see what was behind the frame? And I just don't know, because I was so young. And if they did, why do people not intervene? Why do they not step in? Why do they not say, hey, like, this is not okay for you. This is not okay for your kids. Like, you got to get out of this situation. So, and I think that's just from a place of fear. People are so afraid to lose relationships and lose people that are family, lose people that have been lifelong friends, because they don't want to speak up. But are you really that friend if you're not encouraging your friend to be a better version of themselves? To heal, to deal with the things that they're dealing with, to overcome that addiction, to overcome that trauma, to get out of that domestic violence relationship? It's a lot to think about, huh? So anyway, back to chapter 1. So behind that frame, there was all of the things. There was addiction, there was domestic violence, there was abuse, there was verbal, physical, mental, emotional. And I look back at it, and there was even like emotional abuse to my sister and I. And they didn't even, I don't know that it was even realized. My dad used to spend years crying. Like, he always, every time there would be a fight, him and my mom would get in a fight, he would physically abuse her. Sometimes he would go to jail, or she would leave for a while and then she would come back and things. But he would cry to us and, you know, tell us he was just gonna like take his own life, and we would beg him not to. Like, we would be crying and begging him and telling him how much we loved him, and please don't do that, please don't do that, we don't want you to do that. And it was just so traumatic for us. But then the very next day, we're taking this picture and we're smiling and everybody's happy and mom's back, and everybody sees that surface picture, but not what we're really dealing with behind the frame. So I spent my childhood in fear, in constant worry for my mom, and if she was going to be okay, and the next time he hit her, was it going to be the last, and just things like that. Or the next time that he hit her, was it going to be her last and his? Because he was always threatening that to my sister and I, or saying that to us. So it was a lot of trauma that I never even knew was happening, because I was a kid. So I didn't understand that this was going to affect me for the rest of my life, right? So then that's chapter, 1, until I was about 10 years old. And then you move into chapter 2, 11, 12, 13, all the way up to 20. So then I start realizing and understanding, because I'm older, that this is abuse. This is not okay. I couldn't understand why my mom wouldn't just leave. I couldn't understand why my dad couldn't just be a good person. I was starting to see some of the same behaviors in myself towards my sister. When I would get angry at her, my first instinct would be to hit her instead of talk about something or whatever, because that's what I saw. When my parents were angry at each other, they were hitting each other. So learned behavior became a factor in chapter 2. And I would self-harm. When I was mad or upset or angry, I would hit myself in the head repeatedly, over and over and over, as hard as I could. And I remember sometimes when I would do that, my dad would laugh at me. And that was even more hurtful, I think, because, like, here I am, 11, 12 years old, 13 years old, self-harming right in front of them as a cry out for help, because I did not know how to deal with all the things that I was dealing with, which was trauma and everything from my childhood that I didn't even realize. Like, I didn't know what was going through my body, my brain, my anything, right? So I'm trying to navigate all this, and then you have throw in hormone changes and middle school and friendships, and I failed miserably at things, relationships, friendships. I couldn't be straight honest with people because my whole life was a lie. Like, literally my whole life. They're seeing these surface pictures of this happy, healthy family, this loving family, this great, amazing family. Whole time it's a whole lie, because what's behind that frame is nothing like that. So I became the most dishonest person you ever meet. Like, when they say that he said, she said, I definitely said, and he probably didn't. So, and sometimes, like, I'm not saying like I was a pathological liar or anything like that. No, but I would definitely, especially when friends would come over and see my parents fighting and stuff, and they would go back to school and like talk about it, I would be like, they're lying. You know, I would call them liars and just make it seem like my life was what that picture was, right? And nobody's going to tell otherwise. So then I got to the point where I didn't want people at my house. I would go stay everywhere else, and I didn't want them to stay at my house. But then I was afraid to go stay anywhere because I didn't want to leave my sister there by herself and have to deal with that if I wasn't there. So then fast forward a little bit, my parents separated. This is still chapter 2. They separate. They become so vengeful towards each other. Every time they see each other, they're calling the police, getting each other arrested for DUIs. My mom ended up with 8 DUIs. My dad ended up with 10 and lost his license indefinitely. Thankfully, my mom has done a complete 360. She has an amazing life now, an amazing husband. She does not let alcohol control her life. She doesn't let anything control her life. She's living a happy, healthy life and a happy, healthy relationship. And I'm so thankful for that. But the hell she went through to get there, to get to that place in life, like, I can't imagine. I've been through domestic violence myself, and I didn't realize what she actually had to deal with until I went through it myself. So just to my mom, like, I'm so sorry that you ever had to deal with that you ever had to experience that. But I'm so thankful that you are the person you are now in this life. Because that person is a great person, is a wonderful person. And anyway, so they were in and out of jail. And my sister and I were basically like on our own in middle school. So our house became the party house. We hung out with an older crowd of kids, 18, 19, 20, 21, stuff like that. So we literally had the party house because we didn't have parents there. It was wild to me, because looking back, like, I can't imagine like that being my kids. I can't believe that I didn't have a child before I was 18. Kylie was born. Of course, I got pregnant with Kylie, my oldest daughter, when I was 17. So this is still chapter 2. And I ended up with 2 kids by the time I was 20, which is the end of chapter 2. And in a DV relationship. I had been through alcohol dependency at a very young age. I smoked my first cigarette, I think, when I was 9 or 10 years old. So I was just doing all these things, and most of it was learned behavior, seen behavior. Like, this is stuff that I see every day, like I'm exposed to every day. So what we expose our kids to really affects the choices that they make in life and what they're going to do when they are faced with those kind of situations. So I was a wild, wild child, and I ended up in my first DV relationship when I was 14 with an 18-year-old, and it was completely toxic. It was constant cheating, constant lying. He was in and out of jail, constant drug use, like all this stuff. And it took me forever to get out of that relationship. I was in that relationship for 8 years, and it wasn't until I had 2 kids at 19 years old that I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then when I wasn't drinking, I wasn't smoking, I wasn't doing anything, like, we didn't have anything in common anymore. Because the only thing we had in common were those unhealthy things, those addictions, those traumas. We had such a trauma bond. It was insane. So I had to, but at the time, I didn't even realize that that's what it was, right? I just thought, oh my gosh, like, now I understand what my mom went through. I always, wondered why she didn't leave and this and that. Now I know, and like, this is my lesson. So, when I got out of that relationship, I stayed by myself for a little while and just tried to do some healing. I didn't really know how to do that though. Like, I wasn't in therapy. I wasn't doing any of that kind of stuff. So then we move into chapter 3, from my 20s to my 30s. And this chapter was like, I had some loss and some death in chapters 1 and 2. But chapter 3 is the chapter that rocked me. I lost relationships. I made amends with some relationships from high school that I had ruined because I was that mean girl, because I didn't know what to do with all this anger, all this trauma, all this stuff that I had been exposed to in chapters 1 and most of 2, that I became this girl that now I look to my daughter who's in middle school and I'm like, that one ain't your friend, okay? She's a mean girl. She's trying to hurt everybody because she's hurting herself. And I say that because I was that girl. I was so hurt inside. I just wanted somebody else to feel a little teeny bit of what I felt, right? So I was not always the nice, like, oh, sweet Nina. No. I was a literal bitch most of the time. And it's because I was not healed. I didn't have the tools, the resources. My parents were both going through some of the darkest times of their lives without the tools and resources to help themselves. So how could they help me? And so in chapter 3, I spent some time trying to heal all of that stuff, but without therapy and lots of beer, lots of alcohol. So instead of healing it, I was hiding it, right? I was using alcohol to cover it up, to just make me feel better, because that's what helped. That's what worked. And then I realized, like, maybe that's what my mom was doing. Maybe that's why she drank so much when we were kids, because she had to feel better. She had to hide what she was feeling. And the only way to do that was through alcohol, to make her feel a little bit better and seem okay, even though inside she was screaming and crying for help. But everybody saw that surface picture. They didn't see what was behind the frame. And the ones that did, maybe, I don't know. I can't speak for that. Because now looking back, like if I see somebody in a situation that my mom was in and their husband or their boyfriend are beating the shit out of them every single week, I'm gonna grab them and be like, what is wrong with you? Like, you are more than this. No one will ever put their hands on you. Get up, stop feeling sorry for yourself, and figure it out. So I had to do that with myself too. Like when I left my first EV relationship. Like, you can do this on your own. Your mother did. So get up and figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. And thank goodness for that, because I probably wouldn't be here today if I hadn't. At all. And that's crazy to think about. But then you look back through pictures from my teenage years, from my early 20s, and they're all smiles with my kids and their father and me. And we looked like this happy, happy little family. But we were not, because behind that frame was a living hell. It's crazy how we expose this surface image to everybody. Let's make it okay to not be okay. And stop hiding behind these surface pictures and be real, be raw, be truthful. And I've done that so much now, especially on this podcast. Like, you guys have seen me over the last year or so, like in a couple different broken relationships, like where I'm just totally like, how did that just happen to me? Like, am I that stupid? Am I that blind? Like, what's going on? So, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. I'm still learning lessons. So anyway, back to my chapter 3 in my 20s and 30s. So grief really started to affect me. And maybe it's because I was healing or I was attempting to. I had another child. I had Jocelyn, my little sweet JG. And then alcohol still played a huge factor in our lives and really kind of took control of our marriage. So then our marriage ended, and but not before we had 4 children. So now I have 6 kids. I'm in my 30s. I am in yet another unhealthy relationship. Still not in therapy. And still trying to heal all this trauma that I'm still carrying from childhood, and all of this unhealed in my teen years, all this unhealed hurt and pain and anger and everything. And it just was, I couldn't figure out how to move forward from that. Like how to focus on that, not really move forward, but how to focus on that and healing myself, and focus on being a mom and a wife and everything else. There was no balance. So then we get divorced. And after my divorce, I was still drinking, still making bad relationship choices, still not paying attention to that instinct or that gut feeling, or God tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, this ain't it. This is not what I'm bringing for you. No, I was still trying to control my own life, my own destiny, and saying, no, like, this is what I'm going to do because this is what I want. Okay, so you do that and see how it works out for you. And it did not. It did not work out for me at all. Okay, so a few more failed relationships, and here we are today. A few more failed relationships, I should say. And then I lost my father and my daughter within a year of each other. And I couldn't figure out, like, for so long, like, I knew it was my dad's decision. My dad needed an amputation in order to prevent infection that would take his life. And he chose not to have that amputation. And we respected that because he had dementia, it was progressing so quickly. He had diabetes. The healing process is much longer. He probably wouldn't have remembered the surgery one day and would have the next. And it was not the best option for my dad to have an amputation at that state in his life and in his journey and all of that. And he kept saying, I came in this world with all my limbs and I'm going out with them. So we honored that and we let him live it out. And so he ended up passing away in October of 2022. And I kept saying, like, he's so young. Like, why, sometimes after he passed, like, why didn't he just have the damn amputation? Like, he was so young. Like, why did he have to go so early, right? And then when my daughter Hayden, when her life was taken, I understood then. Because at that point I knew my dad had to go first. Because he couldn't have went through that pain, through that loss, through that grief. He was not strong enough for that. And it would have not been good. So he had to go first. And I'm so thankful that he did now, because he was waiting on her. And she was not alone. She was not by herself. She'll never be by herself. And one day I'll be able to see both of them again, and I'm thankful for that. So through that journey, I didn't have a choice but to seek therapy. Because when my dad died, I felt like a lot of my trauma that I had experienced as a kid, that was caused from my childhood, a lot of that died with him. And a lot of it resurfaced bigger than I thought it ever would. So therapy was a huge key for me. So I got back into therapy. I did not take medication after my dad passed, because I was managing it okay. Like, I still had the kids, I still had all the things I needed to do, you know, all the life things. And then a year goes by and Hayden's life is taken, and that really messed me up. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't stop shaking uncontrollably. So I had to go to the doctor, and I had to get some assistance through medication and through more intensive therapy and things like that, just to deal with that loss and that trauma. And I'm still in therapy to this day. I still take Lexapro every day because I can't, it helps with my anxiety. Like, I have this constant replay in my head of the day that Hayden was killed, and it helps kind of keep my emotions at bay, I don't shake, like I'm still not shaking. So it really does help me, and I know it's temporary and it's not going to be forever, but it's going to be until I feel, and my therapist feels, and my doctor feels that I'm ready to try to wean off and see where we go from there. But for now, it's working for me, and I support medication if you need it. I don't agree with self-medicating, because I spent years doing that as a teenager, and that is not safe. It is not healthy. It's an addiction. And we're better than that. We're bigger than that. We're stronger than that. And we're braver than that. So seek help. I have tons of resources. If you need resources, please email me, podcastpocketfulofsunshine@gmail.com. You can also DM me on our Facebook page, any social media platform. Send me a message. I'll get you the resources, because happy, healthy, and safe. That's our goal for this chapter. Chapter 4, which brings me to chapter 4. So I just turned 40. So chapter 4 is the perfect chapter for that, right? So I'm going into my 40s. I'm going to be a grandma. I'm so thankful for that. I have amazing kids who are doing amazing things. And do we struggle? Absolutely. We struggle with school. We struggle with grades. We struggle with homework. We struggle with grief. There are days where they just come home and they just cry because they miss their granddad or they miss their sister so much that they got to cry. They got to let it out. My home is the safe space for anybody. If you ever need to cry, come to my house. We just cry. That's what we do there. When we need to cry, we cry. And my daughter's friends, like they know, like our house, just come feel whatever you need to feel there, because it's the safe place where you can do that and not be judged. And we're not going to say anything. We're just going to sit there and we're going to cry with you, or we're going to love you and let you know that it's okay to feel anything that you're feeling right now. So we're doing this all healthy. Like my kids, my younger kids have graduated out of therapy now, but still in contact with their therapist in case we need a session or anything like that. My middle schooler is still in therapy, which is a tremendous help, especially with all the things teenagers go through, socially, emotionally, hormonally, everything. And so therapy is a huge tool for her. And so even though we still struggle and we're not perfect, we're okay. We are actually okay now. And in chapter 3, I could not say that. We were all not okay. We were broken beyond anything I can explain. We were destroyed. Our entire lives were destroyed. And the lives that we knew, that we loved, will never exist again. So we had to learn how to live in a new life. This life that we live in now is different than anything we've ever experienced, anything we've ever known. So you have to learn who you are now, because you're never going to be that person that you were before this trauma. You're never going to be that person that you were before this loss. So it's so hard to try to learn who you are now while you're grieving, while you're worried about your family, and while you're still being exposed to trauma, because we haven't even been to trial yet, and it's been almost 2 years. And now we're looking at a possible continuance. So please pray for that. Pray that it's denied. Pray that we can move forward and still have our trial in June. But in chapter 40, I've got to do great things for Hayden. I've got to do great things for my kids. I've got to set them up and show them that even though you have experienced the worst thing you have ever thought could happen in your lifetime, you have to make something out of it. You have to do something with it. Turn that trauma into triumph. Turn that pain into a purpose. Find the purpose in the pain. And I feel like my purpose through Hayden's life being taken is helping other people. Helping people through domestic violence. Helping people who have experienced domestic violence. Helping young kids to understand their worth and understand the importance of setting boundaries and sticking to those boundaries, and being able to recognize when someone is being abusive, physically, mentally, or emotionally. So that is my key purpose in this chapter, in chapter 4. Is helping the youth, helping these people, men, women, children, anybody who has experienced domestic violence. And also writing this journal. I'm creating a journal, and I think journaling is so important. It's a huge outlet for me, and I hope that it will be for you all as well. Hopefully I'll have it ready in 2026, and it's going to be a self-reflection type of journal. I thought it was only going to be 90 days. Apparently it needs to be 365. So it might take me a little bit, but I'm going to get there. I promise you that. And I'm just setting goals this year that I know, even though some of them may seem a little out of reach, I'm going to reach them, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to step in. I'm going to embrace my destiny, step into my destiny, and just see where this takes me. And I'm excited about it. I'm so excited about it. We've done scholarships now in Hayden's honor. We're about to set up a memorial garden for Hayden and one of her friends who also lost their life this past year, Maddie. And we are going to make sure that their memories stay alive, that they are not forgotten, and that their stories are heard and told. And people aren't just seeing these surface pictures of them. They're hearing what was behind the frame. They're not going to judge this book by its cover, because we are the voice. We are their voice, and we're going to make sure we live out their destinies. So here's to chapter 40 and coffee. Thank goodness for coffee. 7-Eleven coffee this morning because I don't have any K-cups at home. But yeah, here we go. 40 is going to be amazing. I am embracing it. I'm looking forward to it. I have big things that I need to do this year, and I'm going to do it. But the chapter is 10 years, so I've got 10 years to reach these goals, and I'm just so excited because I know they're going to exceed anything that I could ever imagine. So when y'all see me going into chapter 5, just know that I have worked my butt off in chapter 4, and it's going to be worth it. And I'm helping people like you, and I appreciate you so much, and thank you for joining me every week. Thank you for loving me, and thank you for going through this journey with me. I love you guys so much, and I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I will see you next week.